So I just want to start off by saying finally I have the mock interview completed. I want to share it with you guys, but first, just a little heads up. It is meant to be funny. It's not meant to be serious. Please don't think that I'm conceited in any way, because this was an entire faux interview just to kind of give everybody who may or may not be interested in my story some insights into it and a little bit more in-depth detail about me as an author. Just so I could put a little bit more information about the story out there for you all. So I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, here it is.
Oh my gosh, Alfred Muller, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's been very busy for you lately. The fact that you have even made time in your schedule is just over the moon. We have many questions, not much time, and we'll never get back to writing.
Well,
but,
I mean, I know the schedule is tight and everything, but we probably could have picked a nicer day.
When Alfred Muller calls and says, hey, I have an opening in my schedule, you come hell or high water.
Fair enough.
All
So,
right.
what kind of questions do you have for me?
Well, I have asked numerous fans over very many platforms of yours. I mean, Twitter is probably the one I get the best responses from. But you know, you have your OG followers, the ones from YouTube. And they had quite a few questions, mostly about your upcoming novel. And a few others that are just kind of like delving into the author himself, asking about how you create the masterpieces you then let us ingest and read.
All right. You sure you're not an author yourself? That was...
Thank you. No, just a little amateur. Plus, I love to read. It's kind of my goal. I just love to read. No writing as of yet. Mostly because I can't sit down and actually focus long enough to do so. But you know.
Well, so you have these questions. Let's hear. What's one of the questions?
One of the most asked questions is, how do you find the time to write?
Well, actually, that's great coming off of that. So really, it's anytime. I have my phone on me all the time, and I've got different apps that allow you to write down notes. And then there's also pen and pad. I have pens on me all the time. I'm constantly jotting down notes. My wife hates it because they're normally stacked on the island, and it's just trying to keep them organized is my biggest issue. And then once I actually can sit down to write, it's any time. When my kid takes a nap, when I'm at work, on my break, I even stay up late at night just trying to get whatever I can written down.
That is awesome. I mean, that takes determination, because I have a 2-year-old myself, and trust me, it is not easy to find time to actually sit down and get into that nitty-gritty of it. But your dedication is duly noted. Also, since we're on the topic of writing, do you have any authors you could relate to your works? I know there's speculation right now that everybody's like, you know, you're going to be the next Tolkien, but what personally do you think you relate to?
So, sometimes I think I relate to Rothfuss and Martin, just because it is a struggle sometimes to sit down and write, especially when you're having like those low moments and you're not really confident in yourself. And it is a chore. The thought of sitting down to write with a glass of scotch and a pipe is...
Sorry about that. The head of your fan group was very adamant about needing to speak with you, but I told her after the interview if we had time, this was more important.
Anything for the fans.
Exactly. So, continue. We all can't be Nora Roberts, who just seems to eat, breathe, and sleep every single work that she creates.
Listen, I'd love to be compared to Nora Roberts at this point, but I think that for me, I don't have any particular author that I aim to be like. I mean, I have several favorite authors, and I guess the best that I could compare myself to as far as like goal-oriented is Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
And I know he's done numerous interviews where he said, don't try and be like me, because he's got like insomnia and he can't sleep, so he's just able to knock out stuff. But I do find that my dedication is probably above average.
Okay.
And my ability to force myself to sit down and crank out words is something I haven't really heard any other author just come out and say other than him.
Yeah.
But just the ability to sit down and write, I'd say probably Sanderson. I'd aim to have, I aim for my characters to be like Martin's, where he can just, chapters are just dedicated to a character, nothing really happens, but you get to know that character. Epic stories like Tolkien or Terry Goodkind, that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm more of an amalgamation, and maybe my wordage and style, I did a online style relation quiz once, and it said Dan Brown, so that's kind of where I'm in the mix of. So,
well, it has been noted on your Kindle Unlimited, where your books have graced the world, that you actually, one of your fans had written there that you don't have one specific genre that you read, that you actually branch out into many genres. Would you think that that actually helps you when you're writing your story?
Oh, absolutely. I think that when you get into one genre, like, for example, fantasy, which is what I write a lot of, and the subgenres of fantasy, I think you can see romance elements in those books, but they're not the main focus. And I don't think you want to just target those styles, because there's so much more in a romance novel that you can get out of for a romance story. So, for example, in The Water Crystal, you have the main characters, Anthony and Desiree, and there is a love story there. And from the various romance novels I've read, I've kind of taken elements of those and incorporated in their story. It's not just they like each other, they fall in love, they're together forever. It's not random trials and tribulations that I throw in just to keep that love story interesting. I try and make it as realistic as possible, and that's something romance does better than any other genre, for obvious reasons.
Absolutely. And I can definitely see that. I'm a big romance reader myself. And I do notice that, I mean, obviously, I have read your book from the inception. Y'all are going to love it. I cannot put it down. I've read it 4 times. But I do love how you just mentioned that you do have 2 main characters. Do you have a least favorite character? And it's okay. We all know it's not going to be the blonde-haired boy, because he's the bomb. He's wonderful.
Least favorite character. I don't know if I have a least favorite character. I mean, there are characters I hate, which is funny to say because I made them. I hate them. But maybe characters that I'd like to see more of, I wish I could incorporate into the story more. One of them will be Bradford Kenzie, or Brad for short. He's known as Brad throughout the novel for the most part. I wish I had more room for him. I wish I had more that I could do to him. But I wouldn't say he's a least favorite. He's just someone that I have the least time for, which is kind of upsetting when you think of your characters as your children. I'd love to give each and every one of them their own novel, but I'd say probably Brad is the least.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I do notice that, especially with, I mean, your novel is extensive. I mean, we've had this discussion off camera, on camera, the whole 9 yards, and through the several interviews we've had. Coming up with a story and knowing where, okay, this is the end. This is where I am cutting this story off. Do you find that because you have so many characters, you enjoy that you feel you don't want to cut the story off? Or do you feel like, you know what, each character plays his part the way he needs to, and that's how I let this story unfold?
Actually, that's really an interesting point. I'll probably include that in one of my YouTube videos or on my blog. But yeah, I think that when you talk about story arcs in general, the idea is, well, I have to finish that. That has to be done by the end of the story. And I do think that life doesn't give us closed loops. Sometimes we end up with an open-ended element to our life that maybe is never resolved. So when you're talking about life, there are no closed loops, and I think cliffhangers are a great example of this. And when I was writing The Water Crystal, I didn't really focus on closing out all of the conflict I created. There were elements where I included, I was like, this is too open, and especially because this is a series, I wanted to leave elements that could be reintroduced later on in the series. So I didn't focus on closing out all of the character arcs. There were the main characters that I definitely wanted to finish off their story, and that's kind of what I aimed for. And if there were side characters whose stories could be closed, just to make the story more interesting and add conflict elements, I went with that.
That is wonderful, and you heard it here first. It is going to be a series, you guys. I told you I'd get you the deets, and I just did. You're welcome. Anyway, so going off of that and talking about how life is open-ended, do you foresee yourself being done once you are done with the Water Crystal series? Or do you find yourself having new projects come up the more interviews you take, the more fans you have? I mean, we know your short stories, everybody loves them, they are blowing up. But do you see yourself delving yourself into a novel the way you have the Water Crystal?
That's a great point. And I say that a lot every time you ask me a question because I'm not ready for that. Yes, actually. I have so many projects I want to work on, and while I don't think I'm Tolkien by any measure of anything, my main fantasy epic tale that I want to write, I want to save for last, just because I want my skills to develop to the point where I think that story needs to be, and it may be counterintuitive to a lot of the stuff I put out on my blog and my YouTube channel and even on TikTok, but I do feel like that story requires a level of skill I don't have yet, and the scope of it is so broad that I want to nail down the plot before I actually start it. Now, that's not to say I haven't planned it out, because I've planned this story out. And Tyr's Trial is the story I'm talking about. It's
wonderful.
The epic novel that I plan takes place. The main character is Tyr, and he goes through this epic journey post-trial. So if the fans out there enjoyed that story, keep a lookout. Eventually, I do plan on publishing it. But I also have each of the other 3 short stories that I wrote have novels that I have in the works.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't know exactly how my writing will go about, but I do plan to focus on the Water Crystal series, and then I do have a young adult book that I want to put out for my son and my nephew. I'm hoping to write and complete that by next year as well. And then I plan to focus on a few other stories, and then the sky's the limit, really. I mean, I hope that I keep coming up with ideas that I enjoy enough to write, but I guess we'll just happen to see.
Well, I love that answer because a lot of people, Twilight was a huge thing, and Stephanie Meyers came out with this wonderful work that, as a heartthrob teenager, that's all I wanted to read. But then you look at it now, and I mean, you don't really get that from her. So I just wanted to let our fans know that yes, the Water Crystal has been something you have been thinking about since childhood, but you do have a large variety of works you still want to come up with.
Yes.
So, speaking about the Water Crystal, anybody who has watched your YouTube videos, seen your TikToks, they know that it is pretty much an heaven versus hell, or a good versus evil. Would you say that is what your book is mainly encompassing, or would you say it's deeper than that?
Pause. Oh, I forgot what the question was. I don't think that was something I focused on, really. I know that the idea behind it, angels, demons, heaven, hell, good, evil, but because that was already a main factor in the concept, I didn't focus on those specific elements, especially because, at least for the modern reader, I think that the classic evil and the classic good can be boring.
Okay.
I do have characters that encompass those elements. One of them, the blonde-haired boy you were talking about, Gabriel, I do think encompasses the good. And believe it or not, it's not Lucifer that I think encompasses the evil.
Honestly, I can agree with that. Especially with having read it, I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that. Listen, I have read a lot of religious fiction, and while most of it I find it's not my cup of tea, which is odd to say. The stories that I've read I haven't enjoyed, and I tried to take the elements that I didn't like from them and change them and see how I would do them better. And again, reading is opinion, so don't take what I say to be gold. But for me, when I read something and I don't like it, I try and see what I could do to make it better. And when I was reading a lot of religious fiction, Lucifer did encompass just that evil. And when you're talking about the source material, that makes sense. But I have a background in philosophy, and when we would talk about Christianity and Judeo-Christian religion, there was a lot of questions surrounding the problem of evil. And I think in this work, I try and tackle that a little bit and subvert a little bit of the source material and alter it to fit the story mainly, but maybe give Lucifer more of a human side to him. And then from there, I just kind of wrote characters. I wanted characters to be enjoyable, and I didn't want to focus on who's good and who's evil.
I like that too, because I mean, even in today's society, when you think about Lucifer, a lot of people think about the show Lucifer. And I mean, I personally think if he used to be an angel and he fell, there still has to be some sort, I mean, in your book, you know what I'm talking about. He still holds certain aspects of being an angel. So to have him be this sole, you know, dark or evil character, I don't think would have fit. And I think you did a very good job of showing, hey, he's still, you know, who we consider to be Satan and all of that. But you also showed another aspect of him that was almost like a businessman.
Okay.
So since we're on the topic of demons and angels, how did you come up with those names? I know you have some classics in there, but the actual, I mean, like I said, I've read it. I know you have some very creative names in there. I'm just interested in how you got that to happen.
So for the most part, I focused on the source material. So obviously Lucifer, Gabriel, the main 5 archangels. But then I like looking at other languages, especially because I'm an English native speaker. I don't know many other languages, at least nowhere near fluently. So fluently. So I like the different sounds that other cultures have with their languages. So, for example, the water crystal rise of Azrael Kaimana is actually water demon.
Oh, okay.
So I took water demon, and then I looked up different words for water and demon in other languages. Azrael is actually an amalgamation of different words.
Okay.
I wanted AZ to be a part of it. I like that sound, especially for a demon. And I also think it has almost an angelicness to it.
Okay.
And then Kaimana is actually Hawaiian for magic and water.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's one way I do it. Anthony and Desiree, I mean Anthony because it's my confirmation name. And, well, I mean, had to throw a little bit in there. But Desiree is just a name I really like.
Okay.
And then for other characters like the angels and demons, it is ideas. So for certain characters, it's what is this character's essence? When you're sitting down and you're creating the character, who are they? And I'll take words that really stand out that I really think meet that character, and then I'll flip them around. I'll kind of do like an anagram, and I'll take out certain letters and make a word out of those letters. And if I like the sound of it, that's the name.
I like that. I like that a lot. Now, I do have one question that is close to my heart. I've said it since our interview started that I'm a very avid reader, and one of my biggest pet peeves is perfection. Specifically in the main character. Did you find yourself wanting to write the perfect hero?
Did I want to? Not necessarily. Did it happen at first? Yes. I mean, this character is a character I've played in the backyard with my siblings. I have watched this character grow. In my imagination, this character has been beaten down and risen up so many times that he is the perfect hero to me. He's been through so much in my head. And when you go to write a character like that, remembering that you haven't reached that pinnacle yet is tough. So I have had several editions of this book where the different drafts where I've been like, okay, that's too perfect, and I've beat him down. And it may be said that I have just destroyed Anthony in this first book. I can't say I won't stop doing that, but I do think because I know where I want him to get to by the end of the series, I know he can be that perfect hero, so I'm building him towards that. So no, I didn't want to. It did happen, but I think I've done a good enough job to smack that down.
I like that answer.
Well, I probably only have time for one more.
Okay, well, this is the question of all questions. What do you think readers are going to like and dislike about your current novel?
Well, I think some readers, because again, I'm an avid epic fantasy reader, so I aimed my story towards that, even though it is more of a religious or urban fantasy style, so maybe the length. Some readers of urban fantasy are used to like Jim Butcher, who does shorter novels, maybe 200 to 400 pages long. My book is 735 pages, around 350,000 words, which is right up there with Tolkien, Goodkind, Sanderson. So maybe the length they may dislike, but again, we're talking about readers, so who does? But other elements that they may dislike, my creation. So, like I said, there are other religious works that I have kind of changed a little bit. So my angels are probably not what you'll see in other religious. So it may be, if you are a writer in this genre, you may not like how I've interpreted them. But I ask, just give it a chance and read the book for what it is, and you may find yourself liking it. And then the other one, what they like is, I think I do a really good job at writing a story. I think that the tale I'm weaving is a classic tale at the bones of it, the journey to hell, very, very literally in this sense. But I think that the way I've told it and the characters I've created around it are unique enough, and there are some fan favorites in the mythology that you may see that have gotten a makeover that people may enjoy. So I think maybe on the one hand, they may like what I've created, and they may dislike what I've created. So I hope that answered the question.
It definitely did, and as somebody who loves reading and has read your book, I will say I have not been able to put it down unless an outside element has forced me to. And I do see the story is what enraptures me the entire time. So if you're out there and you pick up the water crystal, please take it from the start to the finish and you will not be disappointed.
Coming out in Thanksgiving, or around Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. That was the mock interview. I want to give a special thanks to the camera woman, my wife. She did a great job, even though she was tripping up the driveway. And I want to thank my sister, who you saw as the interviewer. She was great. She added a lot of parts that I laughed. I was laughing on camera. I think she did a great job, and she really took to heart what I was hoping to accomplish. So thanks to both of them greatly. I hope you enjoyed the mock interview, and keep a lookout for the Water Crystal Rise of Azrael Kaimana coming out around Thanksgiving, and look forward to the book cover reveal coming out shortly.